the Oklahoma Newsroom, you're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell. Barry, it is college football bowl time, or at least that's what we're saying, because now the regular season is over and it's time to head full throttle into the postseason. And obviously we've got a lot to talk about with OU, OSU getting some really stellar assignments. Obviously a little disappointment that OU's not playing right down the road in Arlington, but you can't complain. You're in the playoff. You get to go play Clemson with a chance to win a national championship. And Barry, I mean, this team's playing as well as anybody in the country. They have to like any assignment they got.
Well, I mean, when people say what kind of chances OU have, I say 25%, along with all the other three teams. I mean, you got two toss-up games. The winners go play another toss-up game. So, I mean, this is what playoffs about. So, yeah, you'd rather play down at the Cotton Bowl, but you know, it's not like the Sooners have never been to the Orange Bowl. It's not like Oklahoma doesn't have a long, rich, fabulous tradition of going to Miami and playing big-time games down there. So, yeah, it's a great assignment. Oklahoma-Clemson will be a fabulous game, and this is exactly all you could ask for.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I think there are obviously going to be concerns for Oklahoma going against Clemson. I think Deshaun Watson is a guy that's unlike any quarterback they've seen to this point. Even that good run of November wins that they had, they didn't play a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. The guy is fantastic. He, as a passer, fantastic as a runner. He's a dual threat in a way that you don't really see a lot of. I mean, sort of Johnny Manziel-like numbers. So I think that's a concern. But, Barry, there's got to be things about OU that Clemson has to be concerned about heading into this game.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about trying to, if you're Clemson getting ready for OU, you're talking about a team with a power running game, Samaje Perine, but you're also talking about your own Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. So you got a spread air raid team that also has a power running back, guy that's rushed for over 3,000 yards already in 2 years. So, I mean, Clemson's not sitting there thinking, good for us, we got Oklahoma. Everybody's in the hurt locker in this playoff. So nothing easy. It'll just come down to whoever plays better, and that's the way it ought to come down to. You know, too much of college football is manufactured scheduling. You know who you're going to beat. You know 2 or 3 games be tough. And once you get to the playoffs, nothing manufactured. You just got to win.
All right, early predictions. Who you got winning in Miami, who you got winning in Arlington?
Well, in Arlington, I like Michigan State. You know, I've heard.
I don't think they're going to be scared by Alabama.
I mean, Michigan State's got them a ball team. Mm-hmm. You know, they went to Columbus and gave up, was it 5 first downs to Ohio State? I mean, this is a team that can play. Mm-hmm. And I think they're a little bit savvy. And
I like their quarterback, too.
I like everything about their team,
yeah,
including their uniforms. I mean, what more could you ask for in the Christmas season, red versus green? So I like Michigan State. I don't know yet on OU Clemson. Last year, I was very confident that the Sooners would rise from the ashes of Bedlam, beat the Clemson second-team quarterback, and the Sooners came within 35 points of doing exactly that. So I don't know yet. I'm gonna withhold my judgment on OU Clemson.
All right. You know, I think Alabama's going to beat Michigan State, but I think it's going to be a heck of a game. And my feeling right now is I'm going with OU down in the Orange Bowl, but I'm not setting anything in stone yet for any of those games. But I agree with you. These are 4 really good teams. They all have positives. They all have a few negatives. So there's no sort of for sure in this playoff in my mind. That's the great thing about, like what you said. You know, you just don't know what's going to happen. And I'm honestly, I could see any of the 4 beating each other and then winning the championship. And that's really kind of cool. So we'll see how it all plays out. All right, let's talk about the Sugar Bowl too, Barry. We don't want to overlook the Cowboys because they get into one of the Big 6 bowls with that amazing Texas upset of Baylor, which none of us expected to happen, and lo and behold, it did. So Cowboys headed to New Orleans to take on Ole Miss. Is this a good matchup for the Cowboys?
I think it's a fine matchup. I mean, if you want to play in the Sugar Bowl, you're going to run into a good team. That's sort of if you want to rum-dum, go to the Cactus Bowl. So Ole Miss is the second best team in the SEC. Do you know how close the Ole Miss came to playing for the SEC title? That 4th and 25 conversion by Arkansas. If the Razorbacks don't do that, Alabama wins the SEC. I mean, Ole Miss wins the SEC West.
And let's remember what that was. That was a guy that is about ready to get tackled.
He just
throws the ball over his head.
I mean, Mississippi's really good. But the Cowboys, until those last 2 losses, had won 12 straight. OSU has a really good team. Mm-hmm. Now, the history says that OSU struggles with Ole Miss. We saw it in 2 straight Cotton Bowl matchups between them, 03-09. Mm-hmm. Eli Manning beat the Cowboys in 03. Then we had the defensive slugfest down in 09. 21-7 Mississippi. It's time for the Cowboys.
I like to think of that more as offensive ineptness, but I mean defensive battle if you want.
Whatever it was. It's time for OSU to win one of these. It'd be great for the Cowboys. It'd be great for the Big 12, and it would be nice for all of college football to see the SEC get brought down a notch, which frankly it already has with this season. It's not been a great year for the SEC. If that continues into bowl season, that's good for everybody.
Well, and the Big 12 could really benefit from OSU playing well as well, winning this game. I mean, the Big 12 obviously stumbled last year in bowl games, all bowl games practically. I think won only 2 of the bowl games they were in. Not a good showing by the Big 12. That's the sort of thing that people remember, especially if you do it again. So you want to win as many of these games, especially when you talk about going against the SEC. This is the first time this Sugar Bowl SEC Big 12 matchup has happened since all of the realignment, the college football playoff situation. And it's going to be a tough game, but Barry, you have to, if Mason Rudolph's healthy and you've got your defense rested, which to me, that was the big thing late. That defense just so many plays, enough guys hurt over the course of the year. It just took a toll on them, and here they are with this rest, with the chance to get healthy, with feeling good. I like their chances. I agree. I think Ole Miss is going to be a good challenge, but I think OSU can go down there and do it. Now, what about Mason Rudolph? Is he going to be ready? I guess that's not really a question we can answer at this point.
No, but I'm skeptical. I mean, it just seems to me a guy coming off foot surgery is not likely to play 5-6 weeks later. So I think Cowboys have a great blessing in J.W. Walsh and the quarterback depth that he provides and has provided. Very good quarter. They can move ahead with J.W. Walsh and have a lot of confidence to do well in this game. So I don't know that Mason Rudolph will be ready, and I don't know that even if it's possible that the Cowboys would want to push him. So they've got options with J.W. Walsh. I think that's what they'll go with.
Yeah, you don't want to get into a situation where next season you're saying, man, we really shouldn't have played Mason Rudolph in that bowl because he got set back, and here he is again with this reoccurring injury. You want him to be 100%. Now, if they can deem that he is 100%, there's a reason he's the starter this year for the Cowboys. He's a better quarterback than J.W. Walsh. He gives them options in that offense that J.W. Walsh just can't. I thought Walsh played well in Bedlam. Probably better than if you'd have told me before the game and I'd given it some thought, how well is he going to play? I probably wouldn't have thought as well as he did, but clearly he's got shortcomings, especially when it comes to stretching the field, throwing the ball deep, being accurate in those ways. And so to me, that's where Mason Rudolph is ahead of him. And he's also a third down master. Let's not forget his third downs, unbelievable on third down. Mason Rudolph, I mean, on a down that you would think, the pressure's on, especially some longer distance situations with third down and OSU not having a run game. He has saved their bacon so many times this year. And that's just something J.W. Walsh doesn't have in his passing arsenal especially. So they're a better team with Rudolph, but as much as you want to win this bowl, you want to have your quarterback of the future ready to go next year, not mess around in a bowl game and possibly re-injure something. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we've sort of become experts on foot injuries around here. I mean, you go back to J.W. a year ago, gets knocked out second game of the year with the foot injury and sidelining the whole year. Mm-hmm. Now the Kevin Durant, Dez Bryant down in Dallas. We know that feet are not something you can really trifle with. Foot injuries, you got to be careful with. There's no reason to press it. If this was a national championship semifinal,
sure,
maybe you see what he can do. But
yeah.
My gut says Mason Rudolph doesn't play in New Orleans.
All right. Hey, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny here with Barry. Lots of college football talk, and something that has percolated up is the news that Oklahoma is going to be asking roughly 20% of its football season ticket holders to donate more to buy their season tickets. Now, they haven't said that they're raising the ticket prices, but we're talking about the donation to the Sooner Club that then allows them to buy those seats. Again, about 20% of all season ticket holders are going to see an increase, and some of them are going to be pretty dramatic, Barry, up to 100% increase for some people over the next few years. Is this just the cost of big-time football?
I'm afraid it is. When you look at an operation like Oklahoma or any major athletic department, I sit and wonder, how do they fund all this? How do they pay for all this? Well, this is how they do it. I mean, it's this money. Why are they playing games at 11 a.m.? Because the networks want it, and the networks will pay them a lot of money for it. So the financial landscape, the economic situation has changed over the last 30, 40 years. And this is a big money enterprise. It requires tons and tons of money. You know, the Oklahoma athletic budget is in the $100 million range. That money has to come from somewhere. And these are premium seats and premium locations and premium experiences with access to the lounges and those kinds of things. So that's where people get their money. And you're seeing, like with the renovation at OU, the stadium renovation, they're not making more seats. They're not producing more seats. In fact, there's no final tally yet, but Owen Field might seat a little less after the renovation than it did before.
Right.
You look at what we did with the Ford Center, Chesapeake Arena. Major renovation, it went down in seats. Total went up in premium seats.
Right.
So that's just the way the sport is going, and it's not surprising. It is tough on the common guy, but the truth of the matter is, if you're a football donor, by definition, you're probably not the common guy.
Maybe not. And I thought it was interesting. Jason Kersey, one of our OU beat writers, reported this story, and he brought up a lot of really interesting aspects of this whole thing. I mean, obviously, they're going to be disappointed fans. The cheaper the ticket, the better for anybody that's, doling out that money. But he did point out that something that OU has brought to light to people in announcing this change is that at other programs, there are a lot higher costs, a lot higher donation numbers out there. Tennessee was one of the ones that Jason mentioned, that comparable seats to some of the same seats at OU were, donations were twice as high, or maybe even more. So, you talk about what are other people doing, what can OU fans be asked to do, and maybe it's tougher. You're talking about a market that now is the Thunder. People are buying Thunder tickets. Where are those dollars going? But, OU athletics, Barry, and I think this is a point of pride for Joe C. and the entire department, that they don't take any student fees. They're self-sufficient in terms of where their funding comes from. I don't think they want to change that, and I think this is part of that too, that pride for Joe Castiglione and that entire athletic department. And
that's fair, and that's not fairly rare. It's really rare.
It's really rare.
I think it's
Absolutely.
less than 10 schools nationwide are totally self-sustaining athletic budget-wise. So that's a laudable goal. It's a very good place to be, but that money has to come from somewhere. And it's a tough economy with the oil prices low. So, the Sooners are just trying to find that money, and they're having to fund. So this helps fund some of the stadium renovation. That's not all bought and paid for. They're getting major gifts for that, but they're also going to have to fund it through some of these seat increases. So it's just the cost of doing business. A lot of people might say, you know what, I'm going to step out, but so far through 115 years of Oklahoma football, 120 years, there's always been people ready to step in and say, I'll take some of that action. So that's what the Sooners are counting on.
Well, and I have to think, too, the fact that Oklahoma's coming off an 11-1 season, a trip to the college football playoff. I mean, if they'd only won 8 or 9 games this year, Barry, this would be a much tougher sell, I would think, for Joe Castiglione, and they may not have done it.
I don't think they would. I don't think they would be doing this if we had seen the Sooners come off a year just like they'd had with the 8-5. The 8-5 last year really crippled the fundraising efforts
for the stadium.
It was just a terrible situation with the oil prices and the bad year. This season was great for Oklahoma fundraising.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons they're taking advantage of this right now. Fans don't like it, like we said, but it is maybe a necessary step if you want to continue some of the same progress you see. Hey, you're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny here with Barry, and we are talking college football. And Barry, you wrote earlier this week about what we learned from this Big 12 football season, and some very big and important points that you brought up, and among them, one of the things actually the Big 12 addresses the day before you were getting ready to write this, non-conference scheduling needs to be better. They've now made it mandatory that every team plays a team from another Power 5 conference in their non-conference schedule, or one of the independents, Notre Dame comes to mind. But is this going to really hold water? Is this going to fix the problem of some of these teams really not doing great scheduling in their non-conference?
Well, to me, the whole question of this story is enforcement.
Yeah.
Is the Big 12 going to enforce it? You don't have to enforce it at Texas. Texas is playing all kinds of good people. You don't have to enforce it at Oklahoma. The Sooners have played a big-time opponent for years and years and years. But are they going to make Baylor? Are they going to hold Baylor to this rule? Kansas State, which has not been playing people, but is in the future. K-State has scheduled some good opponents coming up. But you never know if Bill Snyder says, let's go back to the old ways. How will the Big 12 enforce this?
Is there going to be a fine? Is there going to be what are they going to do?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Here's the other point is this is a case of you can sort of circumvent the rule. You might be able to talk Indiana if you're Baylor. You might get a home and home with Indiana,
Minnesota,
Oregon State, whoever. Whoever. I mean, we're not asking teams to go play Alabama or Ohio State or Southern Cal. But if you at least make them play a certain standard of level, then there's a better chance that you're going to get a quality opponent. One of the problems with the Baylor schedule and the Oklahoma State schedule this year, it's not just that it was not Power 5, it was weak. It was low majors. It was 1AA opponents. I mean, Baylor played Lamar, Rice, SMU. Oklahoma State played Central Arkansas, Central Michigan, Texas San Antonio. Out of those 6, Central Michigan was a pretty good mid-major. The other 5 were not good at all.
But that pretty good mid-major should be like your 3rd best non-conference or your second best non-conference, not your best non-conference.
If Baylor's playing Houston instead of Rice, or if Oklahoma State is playing
Arkansas instead of Central Arkansas?
Yeah, well, or just, Arkansas State would be a big upgrade over Central Arkansas. It's not just that the lack of Power 5, it's just that the low quality of the non-Power 5 that you're playing. So that's got to change. The Big 12's trying to make it change. We'll see how they enforce it.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting. And you are seeing some of these teams, even Oklahoma State, who obviously gets a lot of criticism locally because we cover them for their non-conference. They're stepping it up. I know that they've had some struggles. I've talked to Dave Martin. You've talked to Dave Martin, who does their scheduling. And when the Big 12 had its shift, OSU lost some games, went out looking for people, had a tough time finding anybody that would come. That's how you saw Savannah State on the schedule a couple years ago. So they really kind of found themselves in a bind. And monetarily, these schools that aren't very good are asking a premium. They don't want to come for nothing. They want you to basically fund their whole athletic department by coming to your place to play. So schools find themselves in a tough position. OSU started to reverse some of that. But it is going to be interesting to see how does this play out moving forward. Because clearly, the college football playoff rankings told us that that committee did not like what they were seeing in non-conference scheduling out of the Big 12. But another thing it told us was that the Big 12 continues to be hurt by no championship game, something else you dove into. Are we going to see a championship game, though, anytime soon?
I think we will see a championship game soon, and I think in the next, probably not next season, but I think within 2 years we'll either see a championship game with a 10-team format or we'll see an expanded Big 12 and have a traditional 2-division championship game. I think the message is clear. The math is simple. 13 is better than 12.
Sure.
And when you're talking about a limited number of data, which college football is, most teams play 9, 10 quality games. That's not a big number. The difference between 9 and 10 is massive. The difference between 10 and 11 is massive. So if you're talking about 50 games, 1 game separation in terms of quality, not a big deal.
Yeah.
But when Michigan State plays in Iowa in that 13th game, when Ohio State plays a Wisconsin, as it did last year, in a 13 game, and the Big 12 champ does not have a 13th game, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and clearly we saw it again. And I don't have any problem with the College Football Playoff Committee putting Michigan State ahead of Oklahoma. I mean, that was a tough test. We saw, them beat an undefeated Iowa team in that Big Ten championship game. It is interesting, though, Barry, you pointed out, it is Big Ten Commissioner Jim Delaney, right, who's sort of trying to pull one over on the Big 12 and keep that title game out.
He stuck his thumb in the soup. He's saying, hey, let's not go so quick to letting the Big 12 have a title game with one division.
Make them play divisions, which in a 10-team league, how does that work?
Well, I mean, you could do it, but it'd be more than goofy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what's happened is this. The Big Ten has seen that the Big 12 is vulnerable. The Big 12 is in a bad position, and the Big Ten has said, let's keep the Big 12 down on the farm. Let's not let them have a title game.
Yeah.
So all the people that saying a title game can hurt you, hey, the Big Ten does not want the Big 12 to have one because they think most years it'll give the Big Ten an advantage, and the truth is, it will.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you know what? This goes back to what I've long said. When the Big 12 first started a championship game, it was the only one that had it. And you're like, wait a second, is this such a good idea? You know, you're hurting yourself. We saw Big 12 championship games cost teams, even from the very get-go. You know, K-State loses to A&M the very first year out. Then they get rid of it, and everybody else gets one. You just got to do what everybody else is doing. I mean, it sounds crazy, but I think it's the letter of the law with these championship games. If all the other Power 5 conferences have them, you better work to get one. The Big 12, I think, is moving that way, but clearly we saw a team get hurt again. OU not playing in Arlington. They're going to Miami instead. Again, not necessarily bad, but clearly knocked them down the fact that they were not playing that first week in December when everybody else was. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.